So hello and good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to the plenary. Let's begin by inviting the moderator for education financing and his team to come forward and then take us through the highlights of their deliberations and recommendations for the attention of the planning committee. The moderator for the session, let's receive them with a round of applause as they come up. So this on education financing, right?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. We had a very nice discussion, which we have synthesized, and I will let my colleague here, the rapporteur, Adam, to highlight some of the things we discussed. But we have also put together a PowerPoint on all the 8 issues that was put in front of us to find solutions for, and we will share with the planning committee. So thank you very much. Adam.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Like our moderator said, we had a very lively discussion. I'll just touch on a few of the things we said. We are yet to prepare a comprehensive report from the Education Financing Group, which will be shared with the committee. So our task was to discuss a number of questions. We had about 8 questions to discuss, touching on funding challenges with education delivery through to what these funding challenges lead to, and how we can optimize government funding in education, as well as innovative ways we can come up with to fund education in Ghana. We also touched on the issue of accountability and inclusiveness and equity in education financing in Ghana. And by way of summary, permit me to just touch on the highlight items from each section because of time. When it came to funding challenges with education, we took a step back to understand how we fund education in its current form, i.e. from the government sources and from the non-government sources. And one of the key, or some of the key themes that came up in that discussion was that alumni associations have been identified as very key agents in funding education in Ghana. IGFs also were identified, that is apart from government funding sources. Corporate funding was also identified. Faith-based organizations were also identified. Community support as well as parents were identified. We spoke about the results, or what inadequate financing of education results in, which I think we all know, so I wouldn't bore us with. And when it came to optimizing government funding for education, the general consensus is that government cannot or should not fund all aspects of education. That was the general consensus from our group. So then the question is, which aspects should government fund and which aspects should be left to parents or guardians to fund? For parents, the discussions centered on day funding, things like feeding, school uniform, house jerseys, examination fees, and some other aspects of education. We feel that those aspects should be left to parents to fund, so that government can fund the other parts, such as tuition fees, the provision of infrastructure, and the rest. And when we also discussed issues relating to government funds like the GET Fund and other funds. The argument or the recommendation is that those funds should be targeted at exactly that, the intentions for which they are set up. So GET Fund is for infrastructure development. It shouldn't be for scholarships and for other things. GET Fund should focus on the infrastructure delivery that it was intended for. Again, to optimize education funding in Ghana, we agreed, or we discussed among ourselves, that even as we are trying to free government from the burden of having to fund everything by themselves, governments by themselves should also not take on extra burden. As we are freeing them in one end, they shouldn't be taking on burdens in the other end based on certain promises we are hearing. We also looked at the scholarship regime and how it has to be redefined or reshaped to serve its purpose. Generally, the agreement was that basic education should remain free. Special needs education should remain free also. That was the general consensus in the group. And when it came to innovative financing, there were suggestions as to how we can innovatively fund education in Ghana. And some of the suggestions came around voluntary support for education, let people willingly give to support education from all levels of education. There was also suggestions around education, endowment funds, crowdfunding, among others. And when it came to the area of alumni support for education, we realized that alumni support is mainly at the secondary level. But many of us here started from basic school, but we are not very active in our basic school alumni group. So it is encouraged that alumni should be streamed down to the basic level because they have come up as very strong financiers of education in Ghana to complement government effort. Finally, we spoke about accountability and transparency in education sector, how we can make sure that the little finances or the finances that are not sufficient for education that have been given out for education, how do we ensure that we account for them, and account for them well, and how we can ensure that those who account properly for them are rewarded and those who do not are sanctioned. Permit me to touch also on donor support, which was one of the questions that came up. The general consensus in the room was that donor support, looking at the present happenings in the global space, is no more reliable. We can no more rely on donor support. So we need to focus on self-financing of our education in order to be in control of the priorities that we want to pursue in our education. Because of time, permit me to end here. We'll present a fuller report with more detailed explanation to the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause as he takes his seat. Next up, let me invite the moderator for infrastructure provision. Infrastructure, if they are not ready, then let's move to quality education. Quality education. There were 3 sessions, right? So you do it briefly for us. Just the highlights. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, so we are looking at quality education. The first area we touched had to do with access to education at the basic level. So the areas that we noticed as burial have to do with 1, limited schools in developing areas where newly developed communities, no schools there, maybe 1 or 2 springing up, which are mostly private schools. So access is limited in those areas. And then cycle of poverty, where especially in the rural areas, a lot of people are in the poverty bracket. So financing their children's education has become a challenge. Then we look at also lack of educational resources, where in our schools, TLRs are limited. For instance, library books are not available, and teachers struggle to get resources to augment their teachings. And then also we look at limited access to other resources and infrastructure, which is also limited. And on the library, a proposal came that some time past, we used to have community libraries in our cities and towns. So we are moving that, we revisit that area where community libraries will be built or mobile libraries be provided. And also cost of education, where since the private schools are coming up more, they charge. So they charge parents who are in the lower class, so to speak, are unable to finance their children's school fees. So it has been also a barrier. And then we look at socio-cultural barriers. Also comes in. Then we look at other facilities, such as recreational centers and other areas need to be also attended to. Then lack of proper attention to foundation levels, that is the preschool, coming up to the lower primary, where it's like this concentration is on the higher class, JHS in particular. So that's area where the children are at the lower level, they are in a way left out. And then children also who miss classes, especially a child may be sick and may be on admission for a period. Nothing is done for him or her. So if it is a month, he loses whatever is taught in the school or in class. And then we look at, the second point we came to teacher quality. And then we look at motivation and retention of teachers. The problem areas that we identified, one, lack of research, where when you go to the tertiary level, lecturers are given research allowances, but coming down, it is not there. And teachers also are not ready to do any research to get more information to enhance their teaching process. Then teachers failure to learn more. It has become a norm nowadays that teachers, I should say, are becoming, in quotes, lazy. So they don't make themselves available to learn more, to enhance their knowledge. Then lack of continuous professional development for teachers. So once the teacher comes out of training college or college of education, and that is all, how he will move on and increase his knowledge, it is not there. Then lack of motivation for teachers, and that is affecting their upgrade. So a teacher comes out as a teacher, he wants to remain a teacher because he's not motivated in any way to move up, probably add value to himself or herself. That is another area. Then low salaries is a normal thing, so to speak. Then limited attention to the primary level. I mentioned early on, but this one is going to buttress it, where in most of our schools, because of BEC, so to speak, the attention is on the upper class. So we leave those who are at the lower level. The lack of proper monitoring and supervision, where probably officers who are in charge, for lack of funds, they're unable to move around as they should to supervise and monitor the activities of teachers in our schools. Then the third point we had to do with the curriculum. So the problems that we identified that had to do with curriculum, limited understanding of the curriculum itself, the content of it. Teachers have problem with it. So for a teacher to sit down, take the curriculum, the subject area, and read through to get the actual content of the curriculum, it is not there. The teacher has no time. So he is limited in the understanding of the content of the curriculum. Then we have a situation where there are mixtures of subjects. For instance, creative art. A teacher is teaching creative art. He may have done visual arts, but not music. Yet music plays part of the subject. How would that teacher teach the music? We also have a situation where home economics and technical skills are mixed up. So if a teacher is taking the subject, he is into home econs, who takes the other aspect? Or one is in the pre-tech, who takes the home econs aspect? So it's also a challenge. Then improper assessment, that has to do with the way we assess the students. Probably per exam, where it will not be possible to get the actual position of the child in what he has learned. And then we talk about WAEC. And there was a request by a participant that children with special need, those with physical disability, be considered by WAEC when setting their questions for them, so that it will be like the general ones, those who are in the regular side. After that, we came to educational technology, how we can incorporate technology into our education system. So we talked about the technology and the need to provide facilities to enhance the incorporation of the technology in our education system. And with this, schools have limited access to infrastructure when it comes to the application of the technology. So government may have to work on that to provide the facilities to make it happen. Right, so we came to language education. So we looked at how the education is run, looking at those who are in the lower level where they will need the L1 for them to get better understanding of what is taught. Yes, yes. Then we came to educational leadership. Then the last one that we talked about has to do how to enhance and incorporate the education in our system. Thank you, Father.
Thank you very much. So next up, we'll do that of the basic school, junior high school. You've already taken care of it. That's what you did. Okay, so now we have the senior high school TVET, right? Okay, so senior high school TVET.
Hello, thank you very much. So we had so many issues to discuss, but at this moment, let me just summarize. So we also look at the same key issues, access. In terms of access, senior secondary school level, we identified that there's systematic issues that need to be dealt with. First, we started with placements, and the consensus was that currently the quota is that the grade A schools, they absorb 30% of students from deprived areas, and we agree that it is low. We should increase it to 40%. We also recommend that students should have the opportunity to edit their placements, their choices, when they have to select the schools that they want to enroll in. You know, in the current system is that students will choose where they want to go before they write the exams. And when the grades are out, it's found very difficult to determine whether the school you chose, you have the opportunity to go there. So we are suggesting that when you receive your results and you know what you've obtained, you should have the opportunity to access the portal and to edit by making a choice which school you want to enroll in. Then we also discussed that just having WAEC as the only source to provide standardized tests to determine whether students will move to the next level. We are suggesting that there should be alternative standardized tests that should be administered so that WAEC doesn't become the only medium for students to write exams to move to the senior high school. So these are some of the issues we discussed under access. Then we spoke about teachers' quality. Here the focus on how to motivate teachers. And we came to the conclusion that currently, one of the major issues facing teachers at the secondary school level has to do with accommodation. So government should strive to put in measures and mechanisms to improve the accommodation situation for teachers. We recommend two approaches. In the interim, either you provide them with rent allowances, whilst we put in measures to put in standardized accommodation to take care of these issues. Another consensus we arrived with regards to motivation has to do with making budgets for continuous professional development for teachers. Currently, there's always budget for continuous professional development. The only challenge is that it doesn't trickle to the school levels. So we are saying that the budget should be available, the money should be provided to the schools so that they can guarantee that teachers at the secondary school levels experience continual professional development. Then when it comes to curriculum, we are suggesting that there should be holistic curriculum to deal with students should be able to have the opportunity to engage in other extracurricular activities such as sports, character education, citizenship behaviors that would empower them to become holistic students after senior high school. One critical concept that we think needs to be introduced, maybe a subject, but we need to discuss further, is entrepreneurship. We think that we need to introduce entrepreneurship in the curriculum of the senior high school so that at that level, students can start develop their skills and ideas on how to create businesses so that if you finish senior high school and are able to progress to the next level, you'll be able to create jobs to absorb others. Then we also spoke about the need to integrate cybersecurity and AI into the current core IT course that we have at the secondary school level. So these were the issues under curriculum. Our discussion also made us to understand that there's accountability framework for learning that is already in existence. The only challenge has to do with implementation. So we recommend that it should be implemented. That would take care of teachers, school leadership, performance management systems, key performance indicators, benchmarks, so that we're able to guide our school leaders to be more effective in delivering their mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now take the submissions from the TVET. The TVET group, okay. Let's give her a round of applause as she comes up.
Okay. So the TVET unit also used the same 5 thematic areas that were given in terms of access, inclusion, curriculum, school leadership, and then the last was teacher training and quality. So these are just a summary of what we did. In terms of access, some of the recommendation was to improve facilities and equipment, and also to foster industry partnership, increase accessibility by establishing TVET institutions in underserved regions, as well as collaborating with private TVET
facilities so that they serve as resource centers, because governments cannot buy all the equipment, that some of them are very expensive. And also establish incubation centers that would also support when they are able to do what they are supposed to do and then sell the things that some of them are able to produce. In terms of inclusion, we said that we would have to be able to ensure that we retool, and also in terms of the tools and equipment that are used, that we have to ensure adequate tools and equipment for practical training, as well as also have TVET resource centers, and then also have standardized policies and inclusion frameworks for, and then also partner with agencies to come up with gender responsive frameworks. And I think the last but two for the inclusion was to provide assistive devices and equipment, as well as also give some female participation a needed or a boost. In terms of the curriculum, key to it was ensuring that there's industry partnerships, so curriculum must be built by industry for industry so that it becomes easier to dovetail and integrate when the learners leave the institutions. And also to incorporate cybersecurity, soft skills, and 21st century skills into what we do. As well as also have qualification framework. So we need to review and refine the qualification framework, whether to do CBT as general, or if we are doing, then we all go on that direction, which would also ensure that we are meeting global standards and our learners can go anywhere in the world and work. In terms of curriculum implementation, we talked about technology integration. We also spoke about facilitators training, review of the curriculum, which is very important because every now and then new things come out, as well as also organize forums and feedback mechanisms. In terms of school leadership, we discussed the need to have leadership skills and competencies, as well as be able to ensure that performance management and monitoring is key for leaders in terms of appraisals as well as KPIs. We also came to the agreement in terms of school leadership to also ensure succession planning is incorporated into teacher training as well as head teacher or principal trainings. And also the last one was teacher quality, that we needed to provide both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation for teachers, and also to be able to provide guidance and counseling for teachers. In all, I think the conversation also bothered on the perception of TVET, that it is for dropouts or people who are not good or people who are special needs. But whichever way possible, we should all be inclusive and ensure that everybody is heard and every learner is also heard in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll take that of tertiary, if tertiary is ready. Tertiary. Let's receive him with a round of applause as he comes up stage.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As far as tertiary is concerned, looking at quality education, we had discussions around the following thematic areas: accessibility to tertiary education. We also look at the kind of faculty quality. We look at programs development. We look at technology in education. and then we also look at the kind of leadership that should be adopted within the tertiary institution. As far as accessibility is concerned, we feel that there are a lot of people, statistics have shown that there are a lot of people out there who wish to enter into the tertiary institution but are not able to. So the discussion went on, and we drew in the discussion where funding should be given to the tertiary students. Notwithstanding, we made a recommendation that instead of just giving the wholesale funding to the tertiary institutions, students or the students to access it, it is better that it comes in a form of loan. And when it comes in a form of loan, it gives the opportunity to the halves who may not opt for the loan to pay on their own, and then the have-nots could access the loan. And then we also indicated that the choice of programs within the schools also creates a barrier for this accessibility. So it will be more important when the tertiary institutions strengthen their collaboration between the universities, the senior high schools, the universities, and then the industry, to ensure that whatever programs that are aligned from these various levels are exactly what they need. Then we also talk about faculty quality. And as far as the faculty quality is concerned, we raised or we recommended that as far as lecturing within the tertiary institution is concerned, yes, it is lecturing, but you all agree that the lecturing is just one approach to knowledge impartation or knowledge delivery. But this is where we bring out or we chunk out people who should be useful to the society and become productive. So multiple approaches will have to be used. And if this should be adopted, then it is possible that teachers or lecturers who should lecture within the tertiary institutions have some level of educational background, some level of training in education where they are exposed to multiple approaches in terms of pedagogy and andragogy. That will help them a lot in terms of their delivery. Then we also talk about issues of continuous training programs for lecturers, then access to resources. We will dwell more on the access to resources when we come to issues of technology. We also indicated that monitoring and supervision of lecturers is very key. And so we were making, in terms of quality, the discussion came up, we were even looking at the kind of programs. When we come to programs, we'll talk about it, but the course outline, what kind of course outline does the lecturer prepare? What kind of course outline does he give to his students? Are the course outlines rich enough to guide those students even in the absence of the lecturer? All these things come to reflect the kind of, or the quality of what, for faculty that we have. So if our quality assurance institutions within the tertiary sectors will actually be strengthened and the mechanisms put in place, I think that will go a long way to help us to check some of these things. And then we also talk about, in terms of quality, the workload. We've all agreed and admitted that the workload on these lecturers or in the tertiary institutions are quite high. It makes productivity very challenging for them. And to reduce this, the discussion focused on issues of hiring more of these lecturers and also expanding in the physical infrastructure, notwithstanding because of the technological space that we find ourselves in. Instead of investing so much in the physical structure, we are recommending that we should be exploring the virtual classrooms. We should explore the virtual classrooms where we can get more people getting into the tertiary institutions, and then we make use of the virtual institutions or the virtual mode to actually turn them out to be productive in society. And to achieve this, we said that then technology units must be set up within the tertiary institutions. And it's important for us to understand, we'll dwell more on this when we come to technology education, that the ICT unit is not sufficient enough to deal with issues of technology. But if we are to explore the virtual classrooms, then it is very important for us to emphasize on the establishment of these technology units and ensuring that they are functional ones, of course. These units, we've realized that research has shown that the units exist in some of the tertiary institutions, but as to how functional they are is another issue of concern. How many libraries are these institutions subscribed to? All these are issues that we need to look at and ensure that the virtual classrooms, the e-libraries and other spaces are all functional. And of course, we must, as we are going digital and exploring this digital space, a cybersecurity unit must be established in every tertiary institution. And we should not mistake the ICT unit for cybersecurity unit. There is a thin line between them. So once we are going digital, it's important that the tertiary institutions establish that. Then we also talked about the program development. With the program development, we propose that there should be a framework to guide these program developments in the tertiary institutions. Within the discussion, we tease out an example from the colleges of education where we talk about the national teaching framework and then the national teachers standard. And you see that that is guiding most of the colleges of education in terms of the course, the programs that they run. In that way, there is a level of standardization for the course delivery. And then we are able to measure in terms of the kind of programs that come out. We also talk about the fact that GTEC is responsible for the accreditation of these institutions. If GTEC can strengthen its functional capacity in terms of ensuring that programs that are actually giving accreditation leave the test of time. Beyond that, they need to be examined as to whether they are worth continuing after the period that has been given to them. It is very important that GTEC also comes up. Then assessment should be done well on the programs that they give accreditation. Sometimes, or research has also shown that some programs or institutions have been given accreditation to operate or run certain programs. But if you look at the nature of the programs and the way it has been structured, sometimes you need to question as to whether it really went through the process before the accreditation is given. And these are all issues of concern that we need to look at. Then technology education. The previous groups that spoke on quality, almost all of them have mentioned issues of technology, but it's important for us to indicate that technology education is very, very key here, and it is different from ICT. So the methodology that teacher is going to employ in teaching that technology, in actually teaching a particular concept, that ICT expert might not know it. So it is important that we detach the ICT unit from the edutech units within our tertiary institutions. We should empower them so that they learn the various ways and methods in terms of delivery. Along that line, we are also proposing that cybersecurity, because they are all going digital and with technology, cybersecurity should be made a liberal course within the tertiary institutions. Once the students are going online, it means that students are vulnerable. Individuals who go online are vulnerable. The systems are vulnerable. So the cybersecurity program should run alongside, so that if you make it a liberal course, but in level 100, almost every student within the tertiary institution will have access and the basic knowledge of how to protect him or herself when navigating the cyberspace will be ensured. Then as far as leadership is concerned, the moderator is coming to move me out. As far as leadership is concerned, we said that we know the systems are in place, but we are recommending that distributed form of leadership and delegation should be more enhanced, or those aspects should be strengthened. In that way, in the absence of a VC, In the absence of the CEO of those institutions, the system cannot come to a halt. The system will be working. They are there. We are not saying they are there, but we are saying that these units should be strengthened to become more functional. These are some of our recommendations. I think when we put up or we put together the report, we'll put in more flesh and the details there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's give him another round of applause as he takes his seat. Next up, we take the submissions from Evidence in Decision Making. That's a research group, if they are here. They should please come up. Research.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. Our group, I can't throw it up here, so I'll just give you a summary. Our group did work on research evidence for decision making. We had some key questions. We had 5 key questions, so I'll run through and then just give you a snapshot of the key recommendations that came through, and then later I will submit our full report. So the first question was around improving data management for the CSSPS. It's a long one. Stands for Computerized School Selection and Placement System. We had 5 key recommendations. One was to integrate real-time school capacity and student preference data into the centralized school placement database. And the thinking here was that discussants felt the capacity of schools was not being clearly articulated, and even the student preference data was not easily available. So how should we make sure that this data is well integrated into the system to make it even more accurate in doing its job? The second point is very closely related, around conducting research and building predictive models to improve placement accuracy. So this is trying to even predict. So before students even choose their subjects, we should have the capacity to build models that tell us who may be choosing what. The third one was around a feedback system. And this was basically saying that students need to understand and parents need to have a way to feedback. So the issues that they had, the problems that they had in the placement system, if there is a way of making sure this feedback is structured to improve the system going forward. The fourth point was, well, this was hotly debated, but we'll put it out here because I'm just reporting. The fourth point was around the cutoff system. We had private schools in our group. And what they were saying was that right now the system, the bar is lowered to the point that all students get placed. So you just need to avoid getting a 9 in one of the core subjects and you get placed. So what it means is private schools don't have any students coming through their doors. The schools are filled, under capacity. So can we look at the cutoff point system? But then there were other arguments around equity. And the fact that if you increase the bar, then what you're also doing is you are removing some students who could otherwise have gone for free senior high school. So, yeah, that debate was there. But at least the point was, can we do something about it? The bigger point, though, is can we actually expand free SHS to cover private schools? So that in that case, you don't have any equity issues. Everybody has access to free SHS. Irrespective of the grades, once they qualify, they are in, whether they go to private or to public. So that was the point there. And then also improving sensitization on grade C and D schools to distribute students' demand evenly. The second question was on policy level data systems and how do we strengthen that. One was to create a centralized education data system that integrates data. So our understanding is there's the Ministry of Education, there's EMIT's data, there's GES collects data, WAEC collects data, GTEC collects data, NACA, NASIA. How do we bring it all together? We do know there's some ongoing work, but the point is the rationale is fine, but this needs to work. So how do we make sure that we have a centralized education data system that is accessible and policymakers can use it? Also, sharing data gaps with research institutions. There was some conversation around, you have research institutions doing a lot of work in this space. How does the ministry leverage with such institutions to make sure that they help them fill their data gaps in their own systems? Training district education officers and school admins. So this was one of the key points at the more localized levels. The feeling was some of the officers who pick data don't even understand the data, and they don't understand what they're supposed to pick. So training at the district and the school level was key to improving the collection and analysis process. And then introducing unique student ID numbers. So that is really about tracking students through the system. Very granular, but something that we should aspire to get to. The third question, I just hope my battery doesn't die out on this laptop. But the third question was using real-time data to address disparities in education. And one of the points here was suggesting the development of real-time education data dashboard for tracking infrastructure and students' needs. So how do we have a dashboard that enables us to see things in real time? Expanding data collection to include qualitative indicators. So our understanding is that most of the indicators are very quantitative. Enrollment data, absenteeism, that kind of thing. But do we have data on things like teacher shortages, teacher placements, deployments, what schools, what remote areas, what marginalized schools have the greatest need for teachers of certain skill sets, or even classroom conditions, or even things like community engagement, parental engagement. Those kind of qualitative data that is part of the ecosystem would be useful to both have and utilize. Third suggestion was implement real-time tracking system to ensure diversity, inclusion, and equity. One of the issues was especially in the mainstream schools, where you have students with disabilities and various needs, we don't seem to capture that data well enough. Automating school reporting systems to speed up data transmission and analysis. We are aware that there's MSRC, ongoing, but the point here was to make sure that this system works. Once the data is collected, it can be analyzed and used at the district and the school level. It doesn't need to take a whole year to come to headquarters and then a whole year to go back. By that time, the data and the analysis is redundant. So how do we decentralize the collection, transmission, analysis, and feedback loop at the district and the school level? And then lastly, review and update the classification of deprived districts and schools. And the idea here is that if we, as Ministry of Education, we understand and we know where the deprived districts, the deprived schools are, we are able to support more effectively. Larry, is my time up? Don't worry, my battery will die on me anyway. So question 4, just quickly, I'll just summarize key points. So enhancing data access. One of the things we discussed was that, of course, training was important, but we need to also make it a very transparent process so that we can publish open education data for stakeholders to be able to see. And then our last question was on research and development in education. So creating a national education research agenda, which has clear priorities aligned with ESP 2018 to 2030. Expanding the education sector research group, because we know that group exists, but expanding it to include industry so that we can also get research needs of industry that tie into
what education produces. And then lastly, on the National Research Fund. So there was consensus that yes, it's important, yes, let's set it up, but let's also make sure that there is transparency in its regulation, how the funding will be distributed, and also let's make sure there is equity in the process as well. So yeah, those are key points. Thank you very much.
He really did. Thank you very much. Let's do it better for him. So next up, we'll take the submissions from regulation, accountability, and governance. If the moderator is here, he should please come up. Regulation, accountability, and governance, if they are here. Then let's move to infrastructure. If infrastructure provision is ready, let's receive her with a round of applause as she comes well. Thank you very much.
All right, good afternoon. We had quite a lot of things to talk about in infrastructure. And we were looking at the various areas, looking at the basic schools. We looked at SHS and TVET, and we looked at tertiary. The initial point we started from was identifying the challenges. In the basic schools, we started with the incorporation of KG, which is already happening in many institutions. Certainly in the private sector, it already happens. In the public sector, over the last 3 years, a lot is beginning to happen, but the problem is lack of infrastructure. So that needs to be taken care of. And we indicated that the basic idea in infrastructure construction for the basic level is 6-unit classroom block. It's not enough. If you're going to include the KG, it has to be a minimum of 9-unit classroom block plus ancillary facilities, which will include ICT labs, library, washrooms, teacher classrooms, and so on. So that idea has to be part of the policy going forward. Then we were reminded that there are no clear-cut standards for building basic schools in terms of allocation per student area and so on. So people just get up and build any size of unit classroom blocks at the basic level. So as a policy, there should be development of clear-cut standards for building basic school infrastructure, just as GTech has for tertiary institutions. Then in considering availability of land, there was a recommendation that we should consider going up rather than just lateral for construction of basic schools, especially in cosmopolitan areas, but have to make sure they are friendly for disabled individuals as per existing law. Then we need to ensure that there is strengthened collaboration between the Ministry of Education, the communities, the district assemblies, so that you have proper decentralization and provision of all this quality infrastructure and the use of local artisans. So local persons, carpenters within an area can come together to assist with providing. We talked about desks and chairs for their school areas. And we also mentioned that the dual desks are unwieldy and should not be the standard. Individual desks should be the standards. We talked about the use of other materials, not just wood, recycled plastics, etc. And the policies around provision of these furnitures should include a percentage of locally sourced and developed materials. We're given the example that CSIR has developed local materials that can be used for a lot of this infrastructure building. So part of the contract should include a certain percentage of locally sourced materials, which will cut down costs. Then we said extension of ICT. We talked about the learners should be exposed to these tools early. We were informed that there's a group which is developing devices that can be controlled in terms of sites that can be assessed. So these can all be incorporated in what we develop ourselves locally and use for our own people. Although we agreed that we're going technological, but some hard copies should also be available, we also talked about provision of alternative sources of power, such as solar, and dovetail that into encouraging our technical universities to start looking at materials that can enable provision of solar power much cheaper available in the country. When it came to sustainability of these devices, we suggested that ICT technicians could be decentralized within a region or within a district so that one would be serving several schools, and some teachers who had an interest could be trained in basic troubleshooting for ICT, handle simple problems, and call on the ICT technicians whenever they needed more help. Talking about partnerships, we said usually PPPs are either philanthropic or for profit, and that unless government had some scheme for pre-financing or could provide incentives such as naming and rebranding local schools after individuals in the community, maybe that was an area that could be looked at. So when it came to maintenance of the structures, we said the resuscitated PTAs could be levied, suggested appointment of facility managers to manage a cluster of schools. We talked about encouraging alumni to be interested in their schools and to use the local TVET institutions to remedy the small issues like desks and chairs that are broken can easily be mended by such institutions. We were told that in a particular secondary school, they had a whole lot of desks and chairs, and the principal of one TVET institution came and said he could take these, they would be fixed and brought back. But he was told that if he moved those things, somebody would say they were being stolen, so it couldn't happen. But when they had gone through the process of discarding them, then they could come and take them away, which is not quite what it should be. So we should look at issues like that. Talked about inculcating values of culture of maintenance in the students and helping them to develop pride in taking care of their own by themselves. When it came to SHS and TVET, we said that we should look at merging some laboratories from technical schools and the SHSs together within a certain locality, because these labs would not be used every day of the week, but a timetable could be developed so that they could be made use of by the two institutions at the same time. Workshops needed to have proper facilities, changing rooms, washrooms, and all those ancillary facilities. They needed to be engaged on. When it came to the double load of students for SHS facilities, private SHSs should be engaged, should be discussed with them. A capitation fee would then be agreed with these institutions, and students could be more equitably distributed and still get good education within the communities. Tertiary, we did not think that universities needed to be set up in every region. We thought that the policy of specialization of universities would be the best one to continue with, rather than have universities doing everything under the sun, and that private universities could be collaborated with to promote enrollment numbers and equity of distribution where there were infrastructure challenges, especially in the private sector. We mentioned that leveraging on technology and virtual platforms could be a way of helping with infrastructure challenges, and could consider an open university, which would be purely online, in order to reduce the burden on infrastructure. I just learned over the weekend that Nigeria has a big, now big open university, which is doing very wonderful things. The technical universities need more infrastructure, and they are also asking that it go up rather than spread laterally. They're also talking about persons to teach, faculty to teach at the technical universities and colleges of education. So it looks like there's a challenge there with being not able to engage all the ones they need. When it comes to technical universities, it was suggested that government should partner with industry to leverage technical workshops in their facility as well as their equipment. Private institutions are more likely to keep up with innovative equipment so they can stay in business. Whereas if the public institutions buy equipment, within a short period of time it becomes obsolete. Students are trained on it, and when they go out, they are not useful to the market. So that partnership would enable students to be trained, who will be relevant and useful to the market. Government should leverage, get funds to create expansion of infrastructure in the various universities, including in private universities. Just as more hostel facilities needed to be built, and the PPP model was the one that would probably get the best for both sides. We said I think that for special needs, maybe I'll end there, the government should incorporate disability planning into its projects to make them disability friendly as per need. I think I'll stop here, and when we put the report together, there'll be a bit more detail. We did mention that in the technical schools, they have challenges that a lot of the expert technical people, when they reach retirement, have to leave. And we suggested that there could be a policy for engagement of post-retirement contracts for these individuals so they can still stay and help the institutions, because it looks like master carpenters, master electricians are not so common these days, and many people are not wanting to go into that. But we should not just lose what we have. Thank you very much, Mr.
Let's give her a round of applause. She's done very, very, very well. Regain their composure. So we will now take the submissions from the regulations accountability, and governance. Let's receive the moderator as she comes up stage. Please speaking. Please speaking.
Thank you. So we're given the responsibility to look at basic, secondary, and tertiary. Basic, we covered kindergarten, primary, and JHS. Secondary included TVET, and then tertiary, or the post-secondary education. So we identified policy issues and challenges within all these three streams that we mentioned. Key ones were lapses and weak policy implementation, issues around language of instruction for early graders, poor rollout of basic school curriculum, poor cut-off structure of school placement, polarized sale of admission forms, particularly to the tertiary institutions, the disconnect between curriculum and industry, administrative bureaucracies, poor regulation of private schools, and political interference. Each of these issues, we were able to identify some recommendations. We looked at the need for policy uptake and policy implementation. It is important that we review the language policy, particularly for the early graders. And then the need to expedite rollout and training on the basic school curriculum, provide teaching and learning resources vis-a-vis materials. They need to review the current school placement system. We suggested a one-off sale of admission forms with institutional options and possibly replicating what the College of Educations are doing. So you bought one form and you have the opportunity to select any College of Education so that we don't overburden students, parents, and other stakeholders. We also suggested that there is a need to align curriculum to meet the needs of industries, reduce bureaucracies to eliminate administrative bottlenecks to policy implementation. We felt there is a need for effective regulation and oversight. Most importantly, we need to streamline the relationship between NASIA and Ghana Education Service and decouple political functions from technical roles with clearly defined functional roles and responsibilities. So that is under policy. Under quality assurance, again, we identify issues and challenges. What are they? Increased examination malpractices, which we are all witnesses to. Issues around certification, performance appraisal, particularly of teaching staff. Weak supervision and monitoring. Uncoordinated, independent monitoring and supervision. And if you ask me, including CSOs. And then declining standard of discipline in our schools. And then generally the poor assessment standards. What were the recommendations? We are recommending strict punitive measures and standardization of examination to deal with issues of examination malpractice. We are asking for enhancement of continuous professional development. They need to strengthen supervision and monitoring, ensure strict accreditation criteria, and this we are placing on the doorstep of GTEC. Institutionalize a coordinated monitoring mechanism, and if possible, enhance capacities for effective supervision and monitoring. We are suggesting strict adherence to the code of conduct and strengthening disciplinary committees at all levels to deal with the declining standard of discipline in our schools. And then in terms of assessment, how to improve the quality of assessment, we are recommending the need to apply all the modes of assessment, including practical-oriented tests, examination, presentation, and seminet. This cut across all the different streams of education. And then possibly apply technology and innovation-driven assessment. And for those in the basic schools, let's work at reducing class size for teachers. There are schools that a teacher is handling over 90 pupils in a classroom. It makes it very difficult for a teacher to manage and properly target them for assessment. Then, the role of stakeholders. What were the issues? We identified limited involvement of stakeholders in education governance, poor local government ownership at the basic and secondary school, waning community interest in basic education, non-application of research work, mostly by the private sectors. We have a lot of research sitting on the shelves, but who is using it as evidence to inform product? And then limited private-public partnerships. What are the key recommendations? We felt there is a need to reinstitute PTAs, strengthening SMCs, make it operational, foster community engagement, including faith-based organization, and mobilize philanthropists for support. Local government should demonstrate leadership at the local level, devoid of administrative and political interference. Again, to step up community interests, we are recommending the need to mobilize community support, particularly for basic education. We are suggesting the need to promote evidence-based education and social programs to bridge the job gaps and promote knowledge and skills transfer through internship programs. On private-public partnership, we are recommending the need for private sector support through corporate social responsibility, research grants, and direct funding. That is it. We are done. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give them another round of applause as they take their seats. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, gradually withdrawing the curtain, may I now please invite the chairman of the planning committee to give us the closing remarks. Let's receive him with a round of applause as he comes up.
I don't know what to say, considering the ideas that have come up. I think we'll agree that cross-fertilization of ideas are very key in decision-making. Decision-making that can last and solve challenges. At home, I said I was not going to recap or talk long, but there were three key issues I wanted participants to consider. This morning, Dr. Awuku used one of those in the Ewe language, Nunya Adidoi Ashimosunyo. Knowledge is like the baobab tree. No one person can embrace it. Then those of you who love music, especially those of you who play the piano, you realize that if you want to get a complex harmony or melody, the two keys, black and white, need to be combined. If you hit on only the black, you will not get the harmony or melody you want. You need the two. Then the last one is an experience I had with my JHS 1 son, who one day came back from school with homework. And he came and said, "Daddy, I don't understand it. Can you help me?" I looked at the assignment and I knew nothing about it. It had something to do with ICT, specifically CPU. So I asked him to wait for his mother, who is very good in those things, so that his mother could help him. When his mother came back from work and was going to the kitchen, this boy followed his mother to the kitchen and asked his mother, "Mama na daddy, on your professor?" Mama, is daddy not a professor? For him, the professor must know it all. But the reality is that the professor doesn't know it all. So none of us knows it all. And that is why we need to cross-fertilize ideas. We have a task. And that task is to find an answer to one question. What type of adults do you wish for the younger ones in the future? And how can you contribute to our educational system to produce that adult you wish for our younger ones? On this note, turn to the person on your left or right with the Ga expression, "Who you are, dog." God bless you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. And a big thank you to each and every one of you for honoring our invitation and being here in present. Before we take the closing prayer, let me just quickly inform you that simultaneously in Cape Coast, at the University of Cape Coast, there is also a similar engagement ongoing for those from the Western and Central regions. Next up, on the 24th of February, we have Bogatanga at the Bogatanga Technical University. Simultaneously, Sunyani will also be held at the Sunyani Technical University. So for the Bogatanga, it's those from Upper East and Northeast. The Sunyani Forum will be for Western, North, Bono, Ahafo, and Bono East. Then on the 26th of February, at the KNUST Kumasi, we'll have another stakeholder forum day. Simultaneously, in Tamale, at the University for Development Studies, there will also be another stakeholder forum. So that is for your attention. You could also use the email address nef@moe.gov.gh to make further submissions. Let me now invite Mr. Mohammed Haruna to do us the honors of a closing prayer. Let's receive him with a round of applause as he comes up.
Please let us be on our feet. We are praying. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alaihim ghairil maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mustafa Haruna, for the closing prayer. So once again, on behalf of His Excellency the President, the Minister for Education, and the Planning Committee of the National Education Forum, we wish to sincerely thank each and every one of you for honoring our invitation. For those who watch us live on channel MOE, as well as Pan-African Television, we are most grateful. Thank you very much, everyone, and all the best for the day. Bye. quick announcement before we go. Please, TNT will be made available to everybody, so please remain seated. Please remain seated. Please remain seated. Your TNT allowance will be given to you prior to your departure. Please remain seated and pick up your TNT. Can we have the ushers bringing all those who are outside to come in? Please take your seats. Please take your seats for your TNT to be given to you. Please remain seated. Your TNT will be given to you prior to your